Alright everyone, welcome back for part 3 of our cruise vlog. So in today's episode, we will be once again taking you through 2 days of our journey south through the warm waters of the Caribbean. Also, stay tuned as we take you to not one, but 2 new countries this week. So in this episode, the Norwegian Breakaway will continue to steam on south towards the clear waters of Honduras, where we will be departing and heading onto the island of Roatan, which is also known as the most dangerous cruise port in the world. So we'll also be taking you onto the island, showing you some of the sights and sounds along the way, and much more. And at the end of the episode, we'll let you be the judge. Do you think it was actually the most dangerous port in the world? After wrapping up Honduras, we will be showing you more of the Breakaway, including another restaurant that we all seem to enjoy, as well as some sights within the floating city itself. So if you're here to see more of the boat, you're in the right spot. And then finally, at the end of the episode, we will explore yet another new country for the channel as we arrive in Belize for an unforgettable excursion. Hop into a boat with us, get stuck in a thunderstorm, and take in sights of howler monkeys, snakes, and more as we head on down Monkey River and even do a little hiking. All of this and more coming in this episode of Maksim Outdoors. Alrighty, well, welcome back to, I believe it's day 4 here on the Norwegian Breakaway as we continue our journey on down south. We're just off the coast of Honduras. You can see off in the distance there. So another day that we don't really have an excursion or really anything to book, kind of just going with the flow. And very ominous looking morning here out in the ocean. One of the craziest skies I've seen while cruising. So you can even see a water spout way out there in the distance, it looks like, or maybe it's just a little rain shower. But yeah, we are heading to Roatan today, and supposedly it is one of the most dangerous ports in America. So we'll be getting off the boat, showing you a little bit of that, just like we did in Cozumel. So we're gonna do a little intro here on this pretty crazy looking morning as the sun begins to rise over the horizon there. So I think we get to port in about 2 hours. So I'm gonna hang out here, do a couple time lapses, shoot some B-roll, and just hang out. But yeah, check out these views of the Caribbean. And of course, if you've been following Maksim Outdoors, you know the rain is gonna have to show up sooner or later. But you can see the sun is up now. We're a little bit closer to the coast of Roatan, a small island off the mainland of Honduras. You can see a couple other cruise ships. It looks like there's 3 other cruise ships here in port. And I do believe we have the tender, which means we got to take a smaller boat to the island. So everybody else is sleeping right now. We're gonna go down and check on Sam here in just a couple minutes, and we'll keep going for our day on Roatan, the most dangerous port in the world. As I stood on the top of the Breakaway, we lurched closer and closer to the Honduran coastline at a snail's pace. The rain finally subsided, and a rainbow even formed just above the island. I decided to head back to our room, and the sounds of the port, like forklifts and people down below, resonated throughout our cabin. The small island off in the distance was now taking up the whole horizon. Tiny palm trees, cars, and even some small huts were now visible just as the ship pulled into port. A little geography for all of you out there if you aren't too familiar with Central America first though. Honduras lies south of Mexico and is surrounded by Nicaragua, El Salvador, and Guatemala. At this point of the journey, we'd actually be closer to South America than North America, which I thought was interesting. But back to Roatan. It's a large island located 40 miles off of the coast of mainland Honduras. Roatan is infamous for being known as the most dangerous cruise port in the world. A quick Google search will clearly show you that. So besides the murder, danger, and crime part, Roatan actually has a lot of positive things going for it. The island is known for some of the most beautiful beaches you will find in the world, and the island itself practically sits atop an ancient coral reef that people flock to from all around the world to scuba dive and snorkel.
So if you find this port on your itinerary or plan on visiting and are curious about the excursions you can do while visiting, here's a few. You can rent ATVs, go ziplining, hold a sloth, go to one of the world famous beaches, or snorkel one of the many reefs in the area. Back aboard the Breakaway, our day was just beginning as we rolled out of bed. I caught the first glimpse of Honduras from our patio, and honestly, it was a lot more mountainous than what I imagined. Fog poured out of the sides of the mountains as we watched locals traverse the roads along the seaside. Beautiful clear waters showed some of the reefs just below the boat. We grabbed a quick breakfast at the Haven restaurant once again before departing and headed off the Breakaway for yet another adventure.
Alright, well, here we are. Just departed the Norwegian Breakaway, and Maksim Outdoors has made it to our fourth country here in Honduras. I said earlier, this is just a little island off of the coast of Honduras, but yeah, we're gonna take you on into this little tourist trap, show you around, and maybe even find something cool along the way. So, country number 4 for the channel, moving up here. Excited?
Excited. I'm interested to see what this will be the next time we come here. We're working on a new project.
Yeah. But yeah, supposedly one of the most dangerous ports in the world, if you could believe that.
So after bringing up the crime earlier in the video, I also wanted to mention that most ports, especially in the Caribbean, have their own designated tourist area. And what I mean by that is, imagine getting off of the cruise ship and heading into a kind of safe area that is barred off from the outside world. There are usually a few gift shops, some touristy signs, as well as a few places to grab a drink. So keep that in mind, and if the thought of Honduras worries you, or really any other port in the Caribbean, I know crime and safety is obviously a big issue to most people. So you can basically get off the boat and have some peace of mind without really having to step into a dangerous or unsafe area. And we'll just refer to this area moving forward as the safe zone. Well, if you know me, you know that I like to share, I won't say useless facts, but some interesting factoids about areas, and this video is no different. So just a couple more facts about Honduras. So the reef I mentioned earlier is actually the second largest coral reef in the entire world. And yeah, it's located right here in Honduras, and it stretches over 700 miles from Central America all the way up to the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Also, during the 17th century, more than 5,000 pirates lived on the island of Roatan, including Blackbeard, Van Horn, and Henry Morgan himself. Luckily, there are no more pirates living on the island. After departing the boat, we continued on down the pier, taking in the crystal clear blue waters and seeing an occasional tropical fish every now and then. The pier area was actually in a giant renovation while we were visiting. It seems as though they are putting a lot of money into the area where we were docked. So our initial goal was to make it out of the touristy area and head into the real streets of Honduras. After a short walk through the tourist zone, we were spit out into chaos. We walked through the taxi pickup area as people yelled and screamed, and stood in a long line not really knowing what was going on. It was a pretty crazy moment. People were yelling, babies were crying, people were falling over, sirens were heard off in the distance, so we ultimately decided to turn around and headed on back to the safe zone for a few minutes. Upon arriving back at the safe zone, we calmed our nerves, grabbed a few drinks, and took in some live music, and enjoyed the sights of the Caribbean's blue waters. And we might have even laughed at the thought of a balmy 7 degrees back at home in Pennsylvania. After a few more drinks, Sam and I agreed that we would give Honduras one more chance. We headed back through the taxi area to see that the line had pretty much dissipated, and headed out onto the streets of Roatan. After waiting in a short line and saying goodbye to the safe area, we took our first steps into the real side of Honduras. It was virtually like going from a first world country to a third world country. People sped by on quads, folks carrying machine guns and machetes were a common sight, and just about everyone you walked by wanted to sell you something. So after a little more clamor and a distraction or two, we decided to press on and head on down the road, looking for any signs of interest or maybe even a beach along the way with no real plans in mind. We honestly didn't feel too unsafe while walking through the streets, but it's always a good thing to have your head on a swivel and be aware of your surroundings, just like anywhere else. After a few more sights and sounds, we eventually made it about a quarter of a mile down the muddy dirt roads of Roatan until we arrived at a small shack selling lunch. We headed into a small building for another beer break, taking in more views of the crystal clear blue waters. Also, just a little side note for folks thinking about doing this, just keep in mind that none of these businesses take credit cards. So yeah, don't make the same mistake we did. After finishing up and running out of money, we explored a little bit more of Roatan before ultimately heading on back to the boat. So, what did you think? Did it look like the most dangerous port in the world? Personally, I'd like to go back and explore more of the island. We headed on back to the safe zone, down the pier, and back onto the breakaway, wrapping up our short day in beautiful Honduras. As the breakaway pulled out of port, we said our final goodbyes to Honduras as the sun set over the horizon. Afterwards, we headed on back down towards the atrium. So, as always, we decided to reconvene downstairs for dinner at a restaurant that had my name all over it, none other than the Shanghai Noodle Bar. So, just a tip for you folks out there that might want to try this place out. Make sure you get here early because it gets absolutely crowded. And I believe it's part of the complimentary dining package, so literally anyone on the ship can go here without charge, hence why it gets so busy. So my first impressions on the restaurant was that it was very small and way more intimate than a lot of the other restaurants on board. So after getting to your table and sitting down, you are given a paper to fill out, and you will eventually hand that back into the waiter. We got our appetizers and food fairly quick, and the food was honestly pretty excellent. Here are a few images and videos of the plates that we had. After finishing up dinner, we did a little walking around the boat, checking out some live music, stopping in at the casino, and even a stop at the Breakaway nightclub, which was interesting to say the least. And finally, we headed on back to the Haven for a good night's sleep before waking up in yet another country.
Alrighty everyone, it's a little after 6 a.m. and we're back here on the Norwegian Breakaway as we head back north towards New Orleans. 2 ports down, 2 to go, and today we are heading back to Mexico. And if you look off in the distance there, you can probably make out some mountains through the haze. And as you can see as well, we got another moody looking morning here on the top deck of the Breakaway. We'll be porting in Mexico here in just a couple minutes, and today is probably one of my most look forward to days of the entire trip. We're going to be doing an excursion today called Monkey River. It sent us down to this little river that heads through Mexico, and supposedly you can see some howler monkeys and other wildlife, maybe even a tarantula or two. See the pilot off there in the distance. Each port, I believe, will send out their own pilot. They'll board the ship and they will take the ship into port. And today's no different. That little boat came up, dropped the pilot off, and now he is steering us into port. It should be up there somewhere. But yeah, another awesome day here on the Breakaway, having a blast. The sun's not up yet. You can see some rain is moving in. Hopefully I don't get drenched again today. But yeah, Sam and I will be taking you It's Mexico yet again for the second time on this trip, and showing you our first excursion of the cruise, Monkey River. So, all right, next time you see us, we'll probably be on foot in Mexico. So, I'll leave you with a shot of the Breakaway. See you in Mexico.
Our alarms went off after yet another great night's sleep, and now what we were referring to as the dungeon, we were awoken once again by the noises of a port. So I got up, peeked outside to see that we were officially in yet another new country, as the Breakaway was docked in Belize. This time around, we were docked at Norwegian's private island known as Caye, and we had our typical breakfast at the Haven restaurant and headed out for the island.
Alrighty, well, just got off the Breakaway and we are here on foot in Belize, not Mexico. So we're gonna head to what I said earlier is probably my most look forward to excursion. What are you looking more forward to? This one or the one we're doing tomorrow?
This one will be fun. And you're going to see the monkeys, so that'll be interesting. I'm just not sure what to expect. Like, is it a lot of hiking? Is it just on the boat?
Yeah,
I'm not really sure.
Usually we don't have the best of luck with excursions like this. Supposedly you can see crocodiles, manatees, and monkeys, so we'll see what happens. But we'll take you along the Monkey River boat tour, so we'll see you there. All right, well, here we are. We are in Caye. This is kind of like Norwegian's own little private island here, just off the mainland of Belize. I don't know if I said it earlier, but we're gonna take a tender from the little private island here to the mainland, and then we'll be coming back and checking this out. But we're in a bit of a hurry. We had to be from the boat to the tender within 15 minutes, so but show you some of the views along the way here before we get to our smaller boat.
All right, and of course, what would a new country be without some Maksim Outdoors information? So, Belize is the only Central American country where English is the official language. Also, the country holds around 900 Mayan temple sites. The largest city in Belize is Belize City, and it holds around 80,000 people. It's also one of the least populated countries in the entire world, and it's home to one of the coolest barrier reefs you will ever see. Just take a look at this photo of the Great Blue Hole. After wrapping up yet another breakfast at the Haven restaurant, we departed the boat and headed down towards Caye. Caye has just about everything you could ask for: restaurants, gift shops, beaches, pools, zip lines, and even a lighthouse. I'd say a good majority of the folks on board ended up staying on the island all day. But we had other plans. We booked an excursion known as the Monkey River Tour that would take us on a small boat to the mainland of Belize. We got in line and waited for our turn before eventually being put onto a boat with around 20 others. So if you're planning on doing the Monkey River Tour, I will say this: if you're not a fan of tight quarters or rough water, you most likely won't enjoy this tour. They pack you in pretty tight like sardines into a tiny little boat, and nasty weather or not, they're gonna send you out, and we'll be showing you more of that in just a second. So upon getting onto the boat, our guide explained to us that we'd be out for several hours, and if we were lucky, we would be able to spot various species of wildlife, such as the elusive howler monkey, various snakes and birds, and we would be taken to Monkey River itself for a short hike in the Belizean jungle. Afterwards, our boat would take us to yet another island for a short break, and little did we know what we had in store for us along this excursion. As our guide wrapped up his introduction, the boat pulled out of the coves of Harvest Caye, and I started to notice some big nasty clouds forming off of the coast, wondering if anyone else had noticed them. So we continued on, heading right into the storm, and eventually the captain said, "All right, well, maybe we should put the tarp on." And for whatever reason, in my mind, I thought he was somehow going to extend the canopy out over us, but he crawled over half of the folks in the boat, reached down into a little hole, and pulled out a $10 Walmart tarp, looked at me directly in the eyes, and said, "Well, you're sitting in the front, so you hold tarp now." And I spread the tarp out over about 18 to 19 folks, and the rain began to pelt us. It was a surreal experience. A tiny boat with 20 folks squeezed in, getting blasted by rain in the middle of the ocean, and just getting blasted by waves. Really, all I could do was laugh at that point. The rain and waves continued to rock the boat for another 20 minutes or so as we all looked around at each other, wondering if we made a horrible life choice. Every now and then I would peek out of the tarp to see some palm trees and mangroves flying by, all while getting hit in the face by giant raindrops. As we continued through the ocean, the rain did finally begin to slow down. We pulled the tarp away, revealing a vast jungle. We pulled up to the beginning of Monkey River, and off in the distance, we could see some huts and buildings the locals called home. The boat started to slow down and headed up the calmer river as the rain finally stopped completely. We'd seen some blue heron and pelican take off as we entered the river mouth. Along this tour, I'll be showing you some of the new wildlife I have documented with my wildlife IDs, so I hope you enjoy. We continued further and further up the river, seeing various bird species, mostly different kinds of herons. We learned a lot about the vegetation growing alongside the river, like the cattails, which happen to be 100% edible, and the mangroves that pretty much dominated the entire riverbank. Our guide also informed us that he had seen plenty of jaguar while out doing this tour, one being over 250 pounds. Belize is one of the best countries to spot a jaguar, he also told us. We continued up the river at a crawl, looking for anything moving in the thick vegetation before our guide informed us that we had arrived at the hiking portion of the excursion. The boat collided with the shore, and we quickly departed in search of howler monkeys. Upon departing the boat, we found ourselves on a well-established pathway. The guide looked at us and explained, basically, watch where you step. There are plenty of snakes and insects in this area that would put you in a world of hurt if you took a wrong step. But within minutes of walking down the trail, we heard our first howler monkey off in the distance. The guide ran towards them and said, "Quickly, this way, hurry." And just like that, we jumped into the jungle and headed off the path, trying not to trip over stumps, roots, and stepping on a snake as we headed deeper into the jungle. We headed around a few giant trees, and eventually we caught our first glimpse of a howler monkey in the wild. We ended up seeing about 3 others while on the hike, and here are a few of the best shots that I got on my iPhone. So after observing and getting some photos and videos of the howler monkeys, our guide seemingly disappeared into the dense jungle when we heard a yell off in the distance. It was our guide letting us know that he found a snake a short distance away. We said goodbye to the howler monkeys and bushwhacked through the thick vegetation to be greeted by a large northern boa holding onto a seemingly small sapling, trying to get away from the tour group. I won't lie, I was probably more excited to see the snake than the monkeys. Our guide started to usher us back towards the boat, the short hiking portion of the excursion was pretty much complete. We bid the snake and the monkeys farewell and reboarded the boat. As we left the shore, a small crocodile was spotted hiding in the river. The boat continued on down through the mangroves, and we spotted a few more bird species along the way, and even a few starfish. After navigating through the maze of mangroves, we pulled up to yet another dock for our break time. A small hut sold snacks and beverages. We had a quick beer while seeing another crocodile and pelican off in the distance, and eventually we hopped back on board and continued on towards the breakaway. After bidding adieu to the tiny break island and boarding the boat, within 20 to 30 minutes we got our first glimpse of the Norwegian breakaway off in the distance. And I will say this, you don't really realize how giant those cruise ships are until you're in a tiny little dinghy like the one we were in. As for the excursion, I would highly recommend it. The boat navigated through a few more mangrove patches as we pulled into the final cove. We said farewell to our guide and headed off of the boat back towards civilization. We had arrived back at Harvest Caye, pretty exhausted and sunburned from our day out on the water. We did decide to take a quick stroll over to the main pool and beach area of the island just to get a peek of what it all offered. After a brief glimpse of the pool and beach area, we started our trek back to the breakaway down the long pier. So that will wrap up our third installment of the cruise vlog. 2 new countries for the channel, a ton of new wildlife IDs, and countless new memories made. Next week we will take you to our last port and one final excursion. So if you aren't already, make sure you're subscribed. And that's a wrap. We will be seeing you next Friday for the finale of our breakaway cruise vlog. See you then.